people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
And a half-second lead on with the simmering car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive, massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
G'day everyone and welcome to another fantastic night of Automobilista Australia action. Bit of a change up tonight with Formula 1 moving to Thursday nights for a few rounds to accommodate the Supercar Endurance Series, which will take place on the Sunday nights. Kicking off this weekend with San Marino. Tonight, however, fine buonasera and benvenuto to the San Marino Grand Prix. Yes, that's right. Circuit more commonly known as Imola, on behalf of Apex Rearwing TV and Short Shift Podcast. Stairs and Madbird. Tonight will be Madbird.
Yeah, g'day mate, how's it going?
Not too bad at all. Not the first time you've subbed in at this circuit actually, Madbird. You filled in for Nether here when Crown Brad Hobson was our first Super Series.
Yeah, absolutely, good race that one. I'm hoping for another good one here tonight at one of my favourite circuits, Imola. So we've got 4.9 kilometres in length, 17 turns in an anti-clockwise direction, which I believe is somewhat out of the ordinary. 31 laps the race distance will be, which is just a shade over 150 Ks, and we're on 2 times burn and wear rate on the tyres and fuel, irrespectively.
There you go. So that's the challenge ahead of our drivers tonight, and a little bit of a different mixed grid tonight. Some of the people that are regulars in this series missing and some newbies actually, so we'll get onto that in a moment. The points as it stands: Lewis Wedding leading the championship from Luke Joyner by 4 points. Ziras and Heath Dixon in third and fourth place, I should say. Brennan Ross with his second place in Australia, he's 5th. Heather in 6th. Scott Murrell 7th. Jamie Snow with excellent podium last round in 8th place there. Ozrob, Robert Dunt and Daniel Leckel. The remaining point scorers, only 11 point scorers out of potentially a lot more than that. We've had quite a few people running in this series, but a lot of DNFs.
Yeah, where do points go down to back in 97 Stairs? Is it 7th, 6th, 8th?
They did used to go back to 6th, but with this series we did make an effort to extend it down to 10th with a different point system to what they actually used in 1997, just to make it fairer. Before we realised that there was only about 10 people who wanted to race this series.
Oh well.
Oh well. And now speaking of people who we haven't seen before in this particular series, I was just going to show you Luke Emerton, but he doesn't seem to be in the server anymore. He was a moment ago. Oh, there he is.
He is in the server, he just has not set a time yet.
He's not set a time, so he doesn't have a placing next to his name at the moment, but he is subbing, well, he's not subbing in for anyone. He's going to be alongside Ziras in that Lola Ford. So there, if you see him, it's not necessarily Ziras, it is his teammate Luke Emerton. Now, the number isn't exactly prominently placed on this car. You can see it just on the rear wing there, number 25 for Luke Emerton, with Ziras running the number 24.
Yes, in real life disastrous vehicle, the Lola, the MasterCard Lola, but hopefully with Ziras setting some pretty good times, that'll be changed up a little bit tonight.
Certainly. So apparently my microphone was a little bit low, so let me try and fix that for you. I think we might be getting on top of our technical issues as Luke Emerton just hits the inside there. Moving on, Gary Neville, another man who we haven't seen racing in this series before. He's in the Prosmugen Honda there. And Ozrob's a regular, so we've seen him a fair bit. Dwayne Davies is a man who seems to be setting some decent pace in that Ferrari. First time he's been in this series. And everyone else we've seen at one point or another during the Formula 1 season.
Yeah, decent time set for provisional practice pole by Andy Simpson, a 1:25.5. almost a second clear of Draper, who is next in the line, and less than a tenth back to Ziras from Draper. So Ziras wanting to overhaul that a little bit, hopefully put himself on the first row of the grid for the actual qualifying session.
Well, we saw Draper in the first round in Australia, but he hasn't been there since. He didn't finish that race, one of many who didn't finish that race. But he's back, and he's hoping to go a little bit further into this race than he did in Australia.
He's back from outer space. Just came in, found this Minardi Hart driving all over the place. And he thought, I'll jump in that, and I'll set the second fastest time in the practice session.
And going on to bigger and better things, the track gripping up ever more. He's done 64 laps in this practice session, the most of anyone so far. Andy Simpson on 33. Ziras has done 44. Ziras with a unique challenge tonight of racing while hearing your voice in his ear as you're actually in the same room as Ziras.
Yeah, I am indeed. It is. I do it quite often in our Apex rearing races. I'll just races. I'll turn around and I'll just watch him. I'll just watch him work because it is impressive to watch. He does have a natural feel for the wheel, and
Case in point.
He gives a little head shake. He's not happy with that one, but I'm sure he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with tonight. As
it's thrilling in the extreme, though.
Absolutely. Rob Dunt, only 5 laps so far in practice, and yet he's gotten himself up into 5th place, although 6th place once Lewis Wedding rejoins the server. But
sitting in the pits at the moment, though.
Yeah, set a decent time with not much practice. Although, of course, we don't know how much practice they've done outside of tonight.
Of course, and that will be maybe something that is a telling factor. We know that people like Simpson and Draper are quick, but how consistent are they? And practice is certainly an element to that.
Yeah, and practice something that Ziras hasn't had much of.
There's been a huge crash at the entrance to the exit of Tamburello by the looks of it. At Villeneuve, I beg your pardon. Wheels floating about the track. Looks like it was one of the Prosts. If we can try and maybe catch a replay. No, it wasn't the Prost. It was blue anyway. Maybe it was Ozrob. Let's see if we can pick up what happened, Madbird.
Could have been the Benetton.
We may run out of time there.
On to qualifying.
The server has finished its practice session. And
your mic's still too low, according to our watcher, Sam Smith.
All right, well, maybe you can talk for a bit while I try and rectify that issue.
Oh, that's recipe for disaster. Okay, we're going into qualifying. We have 10 runners at the moment, as we've gone through them. Andy Simpson, Jaden Draper, Ziras, Dwayne Davies, Rob Dunn, Ozrob, Gary Neville, Netherelmian, Luke Emerton, and Lewis Wedding. Out of those, Nether probably least satisfied with his pace. He is good in the Formula One cars, did quite well in the Apex Rear Wing Formula One seasons that we've held. So he'd be wanting to hopefully set a better time during qualifying than 8th, so 9th position once Lewis Wedding sets a representative time. And we've got a couple of cars, Ziras, Jaden Draper, and Ozrob lining up at the exit, waiting for that light to flick over to the green.
Yes, just waiting for that to flick over. It's actually now 8 seconds in. Have we fixed our issues, or are we still struggling?
Stairs, you're a tiny bit loud, mate. It sounds as if you are talking through a toilet roll into my ear.
Beg your pardon, is this better?
It's still a little bit loud.
Alright, I'll split the difference. Keep going.
So, out on track, first we have got Ziras, followed by Draper, followed by Ozrob. They're our first 3, so Ziras is going to be setting our first hot lap, as it were, once he gets to the start-finish straight. Hopefully gets to the start-finish straight. No mischief or misadventures on his out lap. Hopefully, as he heads
coming out now as well.
You sound a lot better to me. Hopefully, hopefully sound better to the people on stream as well.
Well, 3 cars in the pits, potentially listening to see if I've rectified my microphone issues, and they are Andy Simpson, Nether, and Lewis Wedding. Everyone else is on the racetrack, Madbird.
Absolutely. Everyone's keen to get out there, make the most of this 15 minutes. Ziras coming down to the Ravazzas. Looks like Draper has given himself, wisely, some space between himself and Ziras. So it'll be Ziras here that we get to see set the first hot lap of the session.
Well, let's go on board with Ziras as he sets, as you say, the first hot lap of the session. Coming out of the final corner where Mika Hakkinen crashed in 1999, but that hasn't happened yet. It'll be another 2 years before that happens. Blasting down this curved straight, to use an oxymoron, down into the Tamburello corner, which is a chicane as of 1995, and nicely done through that very, very fast Tamburello chicane. Going into Villeneuve, the car can get unsettled on the way in there, but he's done that quite nicely. Maybe a little bit more curved than ideal. Down into Tosa, they hit the uphill hairpin, quite a wide hairpin. On the throttle early, using all the curb on the exit, a little bit of a wiggle, up the hill, over the crest, down into Piratella. Very, very fast left-hander. You don't want to get it wrong because there's a gravel trap to your right. Down the hill to the mineral water corner, Aqua Minerale. Very, very fast double apex right-hander. Then up the hill. You don't want to lose any momentum. And I think he just did. So that's 5 tenths down on I don't know what he's down on. That's what it says on the screen anyway. It must be his practice time. Through the Variante Alta, the top of the course, and then back down the hill to the Ravazza. Very easy to lock a brake. Down it to the left-hander, followed by another left-hander. And blast your way back. Well, someone's had a spin on the outside of Ravazza 2 there. It's not Ziras though. Heading to the final chicane, the Variante Bassa. Taking all the curb on the inside and the outside. And across the line. And it's a 1 minute 26.1. That is the first lap of this session.
Yeah, absolutely. Good lap time too. That is about 6 tenths slower than what Simpson and Draper were managing in the... Oh, sorry, what Simpson was managing in the previous session, but Simpson yet to go out on track. So currently Ziras sits up in a class of his own. Ozrob, the only other one to finish a lap. 1 minute and 35 seconds. And yes, Draper looks like he's abandoned that lap back to the pits.
Now, Dwayne Davies has caught the Prost of Gary Neville on this lap, so that's going to absolutely destroy any chance he has of a representative lap time on this particular lap. Very bad luck for him that he didn't space himself out quite enough, so he'll have another go after this, I can imagine. But really, this lap is done. He really ought to back off now. It's too late, but he should have backed off before the final corner. Well, actually, having said that now, the Prost gets out of the way, but you can see how much slower he was on that lap. 6 seconds to the provisional pole time of Ziras in a 1 minute 26.
Yeah, indeed. Rob Dunt currently the closest to Ziras with a 1:28.2, only a second and a bit down on Ziras. So good time there from Rob. Oh, Dwayne has gone off at Villeneuve and straight into the wall, so he is not continuing that lap as Rob drives through his dust. Is currently
has improved again.
Yeah, Rob Dunt is currently 5 tenths up on his best time and was actually a little bit ahead of Ziras in the first sector. So watch Rob Dunt, some decent pace.
We will. Ziras is in the pit lane, but at 25.7, so he improved significantly to put himself that far ahead. And Rob Dunt, well, let's see what he can do through the first sector. As you said, very, very close indeed. But my goodness me, he's up on his PB, up by 6 tenths. It's still nowhere near Ziras through the middle sector by the looks of it. Well off the pace through the middle sector.
It's a lots of commitment corners in that middle sector with Agua Minerale and the Variante Alto. Ziras just managing to carry more momentum, I imagine, which is one of his strong suits, as we both know.
Interesting that it looks like Jaden Draper's done 4 laps, hasn't set a time yet, so potentially that's due to corner cutting as Rob Dunt improves but doesn't improve his position. So the other ones, Andy Simpson and Lewis Wedding with no times on the board yet. So the 3 that we were expecting to see up the pointy end of the grid, yet to put in a time.
Those could be, I believe that it counts it as a lap as soon as you leave the pits, does it not? So it could be that they've left the pits but then had an accident on their outlap, that sort of thing maybe. Draper, that is. But no matter, Wedding is out. He is going through Villeneuve on his outlap. So, sorry, no, this is actually a hot lap for Lewis, and he is a 10th and a bit up on Ziras' time in the first sector. So,
and Draper's gone fastest in the middle sector. And, oh, that's weird. He's lagged as he's going through the Variante Alta at the top of the corner. Sorry, at the top of the course. So, I don't know whether that will have affected him. It probably didn't happen on his screen, so he can continue. He's got a Lola up ahead of Luke Emerton, so he'll be hoping that he doesn't catch him, and I think he's backed out of it, actually. No, it's hard to tell.
Lewis
might
with
just get away with it.
Sorry, Lewis with a blistering middle sector. Looks like he's 6/10 up on Ziras' time,
Draper
so
third.
Lewis looking like he's going to take provisional pole at this rate, assuming that he manages to get it through the Ravazza with minimal worries, which he does, heading down towards the Variante Bassa. See if he can hold it through the chicane, get a decent exit onto that start-finish straight. It's very easy to lose all your time, but he's managed to hold on to it. 124.8, a whole 6/10 up on. Sorry, no, way more than 6/10.
No, 6.5 tenths on his PB, it's said. So, actually, no, yeah, that was the timing screen's given us furfies here. It's 9/10 up on Ziras. We're into the 24s.
Absolutely, and Lewis didn't show anything like that pace during practice, so I get the feeling he might have been just keeping that up his sleeve so he could smack it down on the table like an arrogant poker player.
Well, I'm sure we've been seeing him on the sunny beaches of Italy filling up his bags because he's been sandbagging all throughout this practice session. But maybe he was just doing race practice what am I saying?
He was
simulating
doing
a race
sim.
stint. There you go. But he's 4/10 up again on the time that he just set, which obliterated his opposition. Enough is never enough with this man.
No, I guess he wants to just put that nail in the coffin, make sure that everyone knows that he's in a class of his own, which for us is less interesting because it means that no one's going to be racing him. But hopefully somebody can take the fight to him today. Andy Simpson could be that man, but he's still sitting in the pits.
Well, that's a bit curious. It's strange. We're going to see what Lewis is going to lower the benchmark to in a moment. And
another 2.5 tenths.
But he was up by further than that, so he didn't go purple in every sector there, so there's more in hand. Get me some frozen peas, because this is blistering pace. Jaden Draper doesn't... I think he might have set I think he might have done a corner cut on his particular lap, either that or it's an out lap. So we'll move on to see who else is on a flying lap.
Nobody.
Evidently no one. So there's a bit of a lull over this fantastic circuit as we wait.
Speaking of blistering and frozen peas, Stairs, once when I was a child, I was attempting to warm my backside on a combustion heater.
What?
Got a little bit too close. Arse did touch glass, and some blistering did occur.
Oh, Draper spin.
Got to tell you, I slept with some frozen peas on my arse for those few nights.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that. Relevant, I'm sure, in your mind.
Oh, Christ.
Rob Dunt and Rob Dunt.
Thank God.
Will be the next man to cross the line to start a lap.
Thank God. Save us, Rob.
4 cars on the track at the moment. In addition to Rob Dunt. I beg your pardon. It's actually Luke Emerton will be the next man to cross the track. Oh, goodness me. He's had a bit of a half spin coming out of Ravazza, but he's managed to save that. In addition to he and Rob Dunt, we also have Nether and Ozrob on the circuit. And actually, Jaden Draper's just making his way back out onto the circuit with 4.5 minutes to go in this qualifying session.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry, I feel like I've sidetracked things somewhat. Andy Simpson still hasn't left the pits, so I'm hoping that he's going to set at least 1 lap time. He's got to get out there pretty soon, though, if he wants to do that.
It's well, hopefully it's not one of those things like a donut run that we've seen affect certain people in Automobilista Australia before.
Yeah, hopefully not. Lewis obviously not afflicted by that on this particular occasion. Potentially could be a girlfriend with a vacuum cleaner. That's something that's occurred before as well in one of our races.
You really ought to explain that one, because people are going to go to places that they might not, they ought not to go.
So yes, no, that's fair. My girlfriend knocked out the Ethernet cable while vacuuming one night when we were having a race, and yeah.
Ziras was hosting, so the whole server went down.
Indeed, and it had nothing to do with the vacuum cleaner on mine or her bodies, so get your minds out of the gutter.
And that cost me a win. And anyway, Luke Emerton.
Not that you're bitter about it.
I'm not bitter about it. I still won that championship, so I'm happy with that. Wins were easy to come by in those days. Anyway, Luke Emerton coming around the final sequence of corners to set a time. Does he improve? No, he doesn't. So a bit of work to do for Luke Emerton. We've also got Nether on a time. He's currently sitting in 8th. And actually, the only man that I'm aware of in this server who's done sim racing and real racing today, as he's been at Phillip Island for the Aussie Driver Search today.
Oh, so he's actually doing laps?
Yes.
Interesting.
So struggling, it has to be said, a little bit for pace tonight, but
probably a little bit tired.
Consistency, well, yeah, could well be. Not least of which from the drive back, Phillip Island. Well, it's a little bit further from my house, but you know, it's that's a good hour and a half from where he lives, I imagine.
Probably about the same amount of time it would take him to drive into Melbourne.
Well, that's true. So now they're coming around. I haven't seen his split times yet, but oh, he's obviously made a blue somewhere on that lap because 13 seconds off his PB. The front runners, most of them in the pits. Lewis is sat up and 2 minutes to go. He'll want to get out in the next 30 seconds or so if he does want to do another lap time. But he does have a very comfortable margin over Ziras.
Still no Andy Simpson. Where is this man?
No Andy Simpson. So what can we say about him apart from he's absent?
Speaking of absences, Philip Boak not here tonight.
Yes, Philip Boak not racing in this series, nor is his PBF race engineering teammate Brenton Foley, I'm sure watching along with great interest in this formula of racing that they don't particularly have much interest in.
Absolutely.
Being more interested in the GT3 and the supercar type events.
Good Lord, Stairs, I'm loving how you just, you know, just curb stomped me emotionally with your rebuttal there, but never.
What rebuttal?
Oh, sorry, not rebuttal.
I didn't
just
rebut
the no, but just like the swiftness and the harshness of you shutting down my my callback to the absentee Philip Boak running joke.
Well, he isn't actually here, so there's no joke.
No, but let's forget about it. Nether going across the line, improving by a second and a bit, which is still only good enough for 7th. So
there's only 3/10 between he and Osrob now. So if he can pull out anything more,
oh, he's gone off at the Tamburello chicane. Don't know how much time it would have cost him, but I imagine it will be enough to offset his lap.
And a yellow flag ahead of him. Someone has gone off at Villeneuve. You can see a bit of dust floating about.
It's Draper in the wall.
And it's Draper in the wall. Let's see. Well, that'll be the end of his qualifying session. So he'll stay where he is there in 3rd, by the looks of it. And that's the end of the session. Osrob's.
I can hear you, yeah. I'm watching it on my phone and it's just gone to spinning wheel. So.
All right. OBS just crashed. I think
Excellent.
We might be back.
Hello, it appears we are back.
All right, send your Fs in chat if you think we're back. Thank you for bearing with us. Looks like we might have had some technical issues. This time OBS deciding to absolutely die. But we are touching wood that we're back. You missed basically nothing as the session was ending. No one improved.
Nether improved.
Oh,
Nether improved. No, he's managed to get himself up to 6th.
I just mispronounced his name. Nether improved. up into 6th ahead of Ozrob. Sorry for mispronouncing your name there, Nether. And so that means that our pole sitter is Lewis Wedding. Now, Andy said he missed quali because he was messing around with my cup of tea. So make of that what you will. Doesn't fully make sense to me, but that's the explanation from Andy Simpson. So he'll be starting from the back of the grid should he make it to the grid.
I believe it was a quote from Andy, so he was messing around with his cup of tea, not your cup of tea, Stairs.
Yes, well, I changed from reading the quote in third person to first person during the...
never a good idea.
No.
You're gonna cause yourself a mischief.
Messy times.
Messy
times. Well,
I've had many of them.
We've moved on from the warm-up very quickly as we appear to be getting ready to grid up.
It seemed to go straight to race, and it appears that there is a driver's briefing going on.
There should be a driver's briefing. I think we'll take this opportunity with the driver's briefing to have a quick break, and then on the other side we will come back with all of the action from Imola.
Excellent, let's do it, Stairs.
Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
And it's lights out and away we go. It's a great start from Sebastian Vettel.
We come up the inside. They run, but the Red Bull Racing man has got through. The champions done the job. They're all gone. They're all gone. Tander's off. McLaughlin's off.
Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Welcome back to San Marino, everyone. We've had a slight, another technical issue, but not on the broadcaster side, on the server side. So we're currently waiting for another server to be set up, and then we'll go on into the race.
I'm excited, Stairs. It's going to be interesting to see how Lewis can control the race from out front, although he seemed to have quite a bit of pace over the second and third places of Ziras and Draper.
Yes, well, we know that controlling a race from out front seems to be one of his fortes. And I guess we just have to... Probably the biggest threat he has right now is his own connection. We've seen in the Endurance Championship, he's had a very binary season there with either finishing first or DNFing in that series. So... thankfully, in his case, not something that's happened for a couple of rounds in the F1s.
That is good. What are the other three, Stairs?
The other three, beg your pardon?
You said that controlling from the front is one of his fortes. What are the other three?
Well, one of his tays is qualifying speed. Seems to have that in droves, and one of it and another one of his tays is being able to think while he's driving and you know, save fuel, think ahead strategy-wise. It's certainly up there in terms of his tays.
Well, those are three tays, so we just need to ask him what his fourth tay is.
There you go.
And we'll get a
content.
chance to do that after the race. Quality non-tent here from Apex Rear Wing TV.
As we wait for the server to be reset. Currently waiting in the lobby for that to be a thing that happens, but for the time being, it's just this lovely picture of the Autodromo Enzo Adino Ferrari.
That is that tower's still there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stairs.
Oh yes.
They've kept that through all the renovations and everything that they've done. Track is, of course, different now than it was in 2001 or indeed in 1997.
Yes, well, they've taken out the Variante Bassa, so it's just a straight, basically, between Ravazza and Tamburello. So a very fast, long straight, which curves, incidentally. So, but it's good. I don't think many people like that chicane much, so good to see the back of it, quite honestly.
I'd prefer it as a single chicane than to the 80s version where you'd chicane right and then you chicane left back onto the start-finish straight. That was a right humdinger, but in a poor sense. So I did prefer it as the single chicane left onto the straight. I have some bad memories of the right-left chicane when we were doing Group A testing, I believe.
It's not often that a modification is made to an older circuit that makes people think it's an improvement. Usually they're to slow the cars down and people aren't particularly fond of them, but another variation that was made to the circuit was the post-1994 modification was to the Acqua Minerale corner, which used to be a chicane, but now it's a very, very tricky, fast double right-hander, and I think that was a significant improvement.
Yeah, it's difficult chicane to get right back when it was a chicane. It's very, because you're carrying speed down from Piratella, get quite a bit of headwind, and it's hard to pull it up, especially if you got someone alongside you. Of course, the original version of Imola, no chicanes anywhere to be seen, just long sweeping corners and death traps.
Yes, I think there probably would be a lot of drivers who would say they prefer that version, but none of them here to defend it because they all died on the circuit. Because it was very, very dangerous. Basically, just from Ravazza to Tosa, just a flat-out blast. And I'm sure they had a blast until they blasted through into the trees and...
Almost a... Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. I was pleased that you interrupted
me.
I
was just... It's about a 2.5 kilometre flat out. You don't take your foot off the throttle back in those days. So, and it's not a straight either. So it's not exactly something you can just not worry about. Lots of car sliding, especially around Tamburello. I've done some practice lately in the Formula Retros around that old version of Imola, and it is terrifying.
Yes, well, Tamburello was quite a tricky corner until downforce was invented. But the trouble is it was still a tricky corner if your downforce suddenly deserted you as you were going through it, which happened to people like Gerhard Berger with his wing failure, and I think we still aren't 100% sure what happened to Senna, but any car failure through there is a dangerous thing to occur.
Yeah, if someone just happens to pull in front of you as you, I guess if you're running side by side and they pull in front of you and take all of your air away, then you're gonna have a horrible accident.
Well, we're still waiting on this server. No, it doesn't seem to have reared its head as yet, but we can certainly, while we're waiting for it, clarify the qualifying results, which has Lewis Wedding on pole by over a second from Ziras. Lewis Wedding, the only man to set a 1:24. Jaden Draper will start out of third place with Dwayne Davies occupying the second row with him. Rob Dunt in fifth place, and behind him Nether, who jumped up ahead of Ozrob in the dying stages of that qualifying session. Luke Emerton, Gary Neville, and then Andy Simpson not setting a time. He'll start out of 10th place at the back of the grid.
It was just after I was saying that I don't think I thought Nether had killed his final lap because he went off in Tamburello, but managed to claw back time throughout the entire rest of the lap. He was 4/10 down at the first sector, and he managed to better his time by about 3/10, I think, by the end. So excellent clutch lap there from Nether to get himself up into 6th.
Bit of a gulf there between the next he and the next runner there, because Rump Dunt with a 27.4, and then Nether down there in the 31s. So there's distinctively two races in this field tonight. There's the gentleman in the top 5 and the gentleman in the bottom 5 by the looks of it. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see whether it stays that way, or if perhaps couple of the guys who are in the faster area make a couple of blues and end up tussling with the slower guys. And if a couple of the slower guys with their consistency manage to push up and have a bit of a tussle with the front runners, and it looks like we may have a server potentially, according to live races.
Well, we haven't seen it come up on the lobby just yet, or no, not yet. So we wait with bated breath for this to occur. No one in it yet, if there is. So it's potentially just moments away.
Excellent.
I guess now is a good time to make our predictions for the race.
Oh,
Matt,
God.
It seems like an obvious choice in Lewis Wedding, but would you say he's undoubtedly the favourite tonight?
I don't. It's hard to. I love Lewis, but it's hard to pick him because he just seems to have things happen to him outside of his control that cause races to not be his that should have been his. So, as much as I'd like to say that he's going to, walk away with it and control it from the front, I would very much like to see Ziras or Draper get up there and latch onto the back of him, maybe hassle him a little bit into a couple of errors and make it a bit more interesting, because we don't want him to just walk away with it.
Certainly not. Certainly not. No, we do.
And yourself, Stairs?
We want to see a race up at the front, but I don't know. Every time, well, last race I called Heath Dixon to win the race, which didn't eventuate. But let's go out on a limb and put Rob Dunt as our favourite. That's who I'm going to say. He's not quite there in terms of the outright pace, but the consistency I think might come to him. Although he has been, he didn't finish the first two rounds of the championship. Finished 5th last time out in Argentina with a solid drive. So I think he's a man on the up.
Excellent.
Excellent.
And of course, he was the winner, the co-winner, of the Apex Rear Wing 6 hour. So he's definitely got some nous behind him.
Certainly was. Oh, he did that with Sam Smith for Tin Shed Racing, a team that I'm delighted to say that I'm a part of at the moment, with Sam Smith in the World Endurance Championship. So
very well done.
A good stable to be a part of, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Sam, one of those drivers that you can always count on a decent result, and even if you can't, it's going to be entertaining to watch because he's barely in control of the car.
We've had some shootout qualifying sessions where I've just been on the edge of my seat watching him. It's been fantastic.
Still waiting here, Stairs, I notice.
Yeah, some quality non-tent coming your way, to use your phrase.
Can we patent that? I feel like that must...
Yeah, registered
someone
trademark,
must have
registered to Apex Rear Wing TV. You can't steal
Whenever we're filling time, we're creating quality non-tent.
Maybe whenever I say non-tent, you just put like a verbal watermark in the background. So here I'll practice. You say it, and I'll put a verbal watermark in the background.
Quality non-tent.
Preview.
No, I was thinking it needs to be something a bit more like, okay, you say it, and I'll watermark it.
Well, we've certainly had some quality non-tent.
Apex Rear Wing.
Perfect.
No one can steal that now.
Absolutely. Even if, well, they might pinch the times where we said it earlier without the watermark, but nonetheless.
We haven't thought that through.
I'd like to talk about my favourite Imola Grand Prix, which occurred in 2005, where...
Please do so. I know nothing about this. Please continue.
Well, Fernando Alonso in his early days, in fact his first championship year in 2005, driving the Mild 7 Renault, was leading by quite some margin. And somehow Michael Schumacher, after starting buried back in the field, was very fast in his Ferrari, and towards the end of the race was putting an enormous amount of pressure on Fernando Alonso, and I don't think at that stage I'd seen an F1 race with quite such a close finish. It was quite remarkable, and such a tense thing, because he couldn't believe that this young Alonso could keep Schumacher behind him for 15 odd laps towards the end, but he managed it.
Excellent. It looks like we have a server.
Well, thank goodness for that. I nearly said another word, but we'll jump into load that up, hopefully without issue, and that means we'll be able to bring you some virtual Imola action.
Some actual content.
Some actual content, not the other thing.
That went contractually not allowed to say now in case someone rips it off.
Oh, just make sure that you give us a warning when you say it so we can, you know, watermark it.
Alright, I'll give you a nudge.
Yeah.
Which you won't feel because we're not in the same house.
No, we're not. So can confirm that we have a new server, so we're loading that up as we speak. We'll be able to bring you live pictures from Imola in a very short while.
Draper out doing some warm up by the looks of it in the Fond Metal branded Minardi.
Well, I'm sure he's fond of metal because they're giving him a sponsorship for his team, Minardi Hut.
Excellent.
And oh, I've opened the wrong timing session. I wondered why we were looking at Sandown. F1 there, 7 people, 8 people now, so it's currently populating itself. Incidentally, if you want to follow along with all the live timing and scoring, that's available at ams.live.races.info, and you can get the track map, the cars who are out on the track, the cars in the pit lane, what their lap times are, sector times. It's all the information you could possibly want.
Excellent. It's like having the Formula One app, except you don't have to pay for it, and you hear us for free.
Exactly. So what more could you want? What more could you want?
Some more quality. 3, 2, 1. Non-tent.
Apex rear wing. So I forgot what the word was for a moment, and by the time I remembered it, you'd said it. Well, it is Jaden Draper, the only man on the track at the moment. So the rest content to sit in the pit lane while this is occurring. And a practice start for Jaden Draper, not a bad idea, I'd say.
No, I can imagine these cars would be a little bit of a handful on the start. A little bit of torque behind these beasts.
That's,
so,
oh, yes.
So
a fair bit of torque.
Getting some practice, keeping it in a stride, and he's immediately failed to do
that. Is exactly why you should do a practice start, because it is so easy to do that. It might look silly to you at home, but that is so easy to do that, as we see, thankfully, the McLaren of Andy Simpson take to the racetrack. So unfortunately, because of his cup of tea, he missed qualifying, and we'll let you read into that what you will, but he is at least going to take the race start. Yeah,
it's certainly not my cup of tea, missing qualifying, but apparently it was his. And it looks like there's been a bit of a tangle at the end of the pit lane.
Well, Andy Simpson's gone straight into the wall at Aqua Minerale, so obviously doesn't like mineral water in his green tea. What was the tangle you were referring to, Madbird?
Oh, just looked like both the Lolas and another car had all tried to get out of the pit lane at once by the looks of it.
Deary me.
They're all in good shape. It was just it just looked like a little bit of argy-bargy.
Well, it's a bit dangerous argy-bargy in these cars because they're about as strong as a piece of china, which isn't particularly strong. Quite a propensity to shatter.
Got that. Definitely can't put that out with hard rubbish. No shatterable items.
Good to know.
But yeah, just in case any of you were ever living in my council area wanting to organise the hard rubbish, yeah, they're and they are not the tamest of beasts to handle, I believe.
Andy Simpson wiggling the back end like Dorothy the dinosaur, straight into the wall, loses a wing, loses a wheel, and he's got some repair work to do before the session ends. Still 6 minutes to go before the before the warm-up ends. Looks like we're going the distance on this warm-up session, even after we have already kind of had it.
I guess the drivers haven't had it because the server went down. So I hope Andy Simpson pulls his head together for the race, because he's certainly going to need it. Yep, that's a good idea. Let's see how he does. He's kept his foot in it nicely. He's kept it in a straight line, and he's all good.
Yeah, and that was much better than the start we saw from Jaden Draper. And he will need a good start, starting as far back as he is. He'll want to gain a few positions off the start, but then keep it alive. Obviously, it's going to be quite tricky with some people quite separated quite a lot on pace.
Been told we'll be ticking over to the race session in about 1 minute and 5 seconds time. So not too far away from the off now, Stairs.
The off is coming.
It's in the offing.
Anywhere. Oh, yeah, it is. Certainly is. So a pole time of a 24.6, just to make a comparison to the real life 1997 Formula One Championship. That's about a second slower than Jacques Villeneuve's actual pole time. So a fairly accurate mod, it has to be said.
Yeah, not bad.
Yes.
Looks like we've had a late joinee of Scruff, who has also taken a 255 kilo weight penalty to his vehicle. So
that's more than 25% of the weight of a Formula One car from 1997. So that's
quite a lot of weight. So I don't know how well he's going to do, but he's certainly here.
That's going to be about as fun to drive as a Lamborghini at a cop shop. So anyway, that's something that he'll have to deal with. Incidentally, Heinz-Harald Frentzen won the 1997 Grand Prix of Imola, which is not really of much consequence. I just wanted to say his name.
It is a supreme name, Heinz-Harald Frentzen. So
feels like it's sponsored by a tomato sauce company, but anyway.
It does. It sounds as if his actual name is
Rosella Alistair Schmidt.
Good lord. Looks as if Scruff is actually sticking around for the race, so I guess we'll see how long he lasts. Draper currently the only one out on the grid.
Well, this world was meant to surprise us, and it does just that.
Everyone else just sitting in their pit garages, making sure their setup is right, putting their fuel in. No fuel stops, I believe, Stairs.
There is fuel stops in these races, actually.
Oh.
So they'll have tyre and fuel stops in this race. We've seen that the most common type of strategy for these types of races is a one-stop. Although a couple of guys opting for the two-stop last time out in Argentina, but it wasn't the winning race strategy. Well, now that they're on their warm-up lap, let's take you back through the grid. So, Lewis Wedding running the Rothmans Williams number 3 there. Class of the field, ahead of Ziras in the Lola Ford. Got used to seeing that thing up at the front. Certainly something that we never saw in real life. And of the two Lolas, that is number 24. Look out for that and take note of the helmet colour. In third place, we have Jaden Draper in the Minardi Heart. So he'll be hoping to get that Minardi off the line better than he did in the warm-up session. Behind him, Dwayne Davies with a solid performance. His first effort in the Formula Ones in the Ferrari there. Good to see the Ferrari getting another run in the absence of Luke Joyner. Rob Dunt in 5th place there for Sauber Petronas. Starts out of 5th place with Never in the Benetton Renault. He'll start in 6th ahead of Rob, the sole Arrows Yamaha, with Heath Dixon absent tonight. And Luke Emerton, the second Lola Ford there, in 8th place with slightly different helmet colour. And Gary Neville, the sole Prost Mugen Honda. And behind him will be a all McLaren back row, something they probably weren't particularly used to in 1997, but something they're fairly akin to these days. Andy Simpson in the number 9, starting out of 10th place, and behind him Matt Williams in the number 10, starting out of 11th place. So,
oh, that's triggering me now that you pointed that out.
There you go. Well, they won't be there for long because they get off the grid pretty quickly, these cars.
Just hearing from the Lola garage, they have put the old tires onto Ziras's car, not fresh rubber. So
that's easy to get caught out with that. With they have a limited number of tire sets, so if you don't manually change over to a new set of tires, it puts the ones from qualifying on.
Although qualifying wasn't done in this session since we've got, so I guess warm-up, yeah. So hopefully it didn't take too much life out of them during warm-up, but I guess we'll see. They're lining up on the grid. Every
disadvantage is something that you don't want when you're trying to beat Lewis Wedding. So a bit disappointing there for Ziras there, but we're now getting ready to get this race underway. It's the lights to get us racing in San Marino for one more time. It's Lewis Wedding with an absolutely great start, and Ziras alongside him. If he can get anywhere near the inside, he'll go through, but I don't think he is. It's going to be Lewis Wedding leading the way. Behind him, Jaden Draper's got away. Now it's got, my goodness, look at the McLaren of Andy Simpson up to 4th place. He started from 10th.
Absolutely stunning stuff from Andy Simpson. Just scythed his way through the field. Get a replay of that later if you can, although we obviously don't want to look away on this first lap, never mind, but just scythed his way up through the field, around the outside, nearly dipped a toe in the grass, but managed to keep on the circuit. It was absolutely beautiful to watch, and we've got Dwayne Davies taking it to Loic Emerton down in 8th place. Taking it, Rob is off the track at Piratella, he's in the wall, he is well off and last.
We'll see if we can catch a replay of that. So a horrible start.
And an accident! Luke Emerton and Matt Williams have tangled on the way down from Piratella to the Agua Minerale corner. So as it turns out, Rob wasn't last for very long. He's now up into 9th place.
What happened to Draper? He's had an accident somewhere. So this is a horrendous first lap. He's got into the back of Andy Simpson there, who managed to get through and then spun it up, coming out of Agua Minerale straight into the wall. Wing damage there. And I don't know if... No, he's not got that thing going. So we've got 2 retirements already. Matt Williams and Jaden Draper out of this race. Oh, and we got Ziras having a huge moment coming out of the final corner. And he's lost a position to Andy Simpson, who's up into 2nd place already.
That was incredibly close. Andy Simpson's very nearly taken out the front wing of Ziras there, but they've both managed to get through it. This is why Andy didn't bother qualifying and just had his cup of tea. You know, oh, it'll take me a lap to get back up into the podium positions. Don't worry about it.
Unbelievable start from Andy Simpson. What does he have in the bank for Lewis Wedding?
Netherelmian is off at the Tamburello chicane. He's off in the gravel, has lost a position to Gary Neville and one to Ozrob. He is now down in 8th place, and Luke Emerton is coming up at him at a pace. So Nether very quickly going to be last in this race if he isn't careful.
Yeah, just took it a little bit too deep into Tamburello and was just... When he knew he'd lost it, he was just trying to keep the car out of the wall, and he did that, so no damage. And at least not from that incident. But now he's got pressure from behind. So an absolutely hectic first couple of laps here. Dwayne Davies fighting back up to 5th place after all those people in front of him had made mistakes. So Rob Dunt running strongly in 4th. Ziras now fighting back on Andy Simpson. It looks like he might have that place done, but it's still Andy Simpson with the inside line. So this battle looks set to rage on for a time, but Ziras has got back up into 2nd, Madbird.
Yeah, absolutely. That toe down the back straight towards the Ravazza from the Bussa Alta is mighty, and it looks like Ziras has gotten a little bit hairy there on the exit of the last corner. Simpson's got a run on him. He's going to have a go around the outside into the Tamburello chicane. It's going to be nearly touched, but he pulls out of it wisely at the last second, and they live to fight and scrap for the rest of this lap.
Oh, Andy Simpson all over the grass there. He's not afraid of banging wheels a little bit, which I think it's a little bit early in the race to do that, because you certainly don't want to be taking anyone out so early in the race. And this is all keeping Rob Dunt in the hunt. He's only a couple of seconds behind them. He's just had a bit of a moment out of Tosa, which might grab his attention. But here we go. And is he going to have a look into Piratella? He backs out of it, Andy Simpson, and Ziras stays ahead for now.
Yeah, Andy just seems to have a lot of pace. It's very messy pace. He's all over the shop, and I can't imagine it's going to last long. He's gonna dip a tire in the grass somewhere. He's around. He's off the inside, squeezes into that tiny gap that was barely there.
Oh, there's a bit of contact there. I don't know how Ziras didn't get spun out there. It's normally the car on the outside will get completely destroyed, but they've been side by side for a lap, half a lap even, and Andy Simpson goes a little bit deep into Rivazza, so that allows Ziras to get back underneath him and back up into second place. But every time they get out of the corner, it's like that McLaren just seems to have the legs on the straight, and Ziras sliding his way into the chicane.
Absolutely, they are all over each other. That's going to be the battle to watch, hopefully, for the rest of the race. Andy going for the outside in Tamburello chicane again. Is he going to get it stuck this time? They both lock up a little bit of touch, a little bit more than a little bit, but they've managed to get through in one piece. Good Lord, what is happening? I
think Andy needs to be a little bit more careful. They're basically just gifting Lewis Wedding an advantage here. It's just, there's no point in fighting so hard early in the race. And the fact that they're making so much contact is just not ideal.
Yeah, he's run very wide there. Ziras probably not very happy with that. Just got sort of blocked out at the exit of Tosa. Is going very defensive at Piratella, but Ziras takes the position back fairly easily, although Andy is still alongside. Never mind, Andy hangs on to second position down into Agua Minerale. Oh my God, this is getting a little bit dangerous now, I think, Stairs.
Yeah, well, Andy Simpson's got the position now, but it's almost like Andy braked earlier than Ziras was expecting coming up into Aqua Minerale, and nearly chopped off Ziras' nose. But well, if Andy Simpson has the pace, now's the time to show it, because he's 8 seconds behind Lewis Wedding, and the win's all but gone if he doesn't have the pace to match Lewis, or there's not a safety car or anything like that.
That's blown out from about 3 seconds at the start of this lap, so them tussling has really given Lewis a lot of breathing space to extend his advantage.
As he just sets the fastest lap of the race again at 28.5, and he's the only man who's set a sub 1 minute 30 lap time.
Looks like Rob has had an accident somewhere behind him. No idea where, but he was in 4th and he's now down in 5th place. Dwayne Davies managing to pull his way back up into 4th from 8th.
Oh, and we got Luke Emerton's off, and now there's back up through. He had dropped back to last place, but now Luke Emerton with the mistake. He's in last place.
He's coming back at him though. He's got a bit more closing speed there at the Rivazza, and is only less than a second behind Nether now. So Nether can't. Oh, as he's just caught a slide coming out of the Rivazza, and has lost quite a lot of time there. So sets about chasing back after Nether again.
So rejoining this battle for 2nd and 3rd place. And it's Andy Simpson with a slightly more comfortable advantage, but he's just made a mistake coming up the hill. And that's going to put Ziras right back on his tail as they go into the Variante Alta. Oh, a bit of a slide there for Ziras. His tyres surely cannot last if this is only lap 5 of 31 for a one-stop. He's got to make them last till about lap 15 or so if he wants to make that strategy work.
I almost fail to believe that any of these cars are going to make it to lap 31, Stairs, with the way that...
Dwayne Davies. Something's happened to Dwayne Davies. He is
actually in the...
huge crash. Looking like, yeah, coming up the hill, and just got a swapper on and straight into the wall. Loses his front right tyre, Madbird, and that is the end of Ferrari's bid for San Marino. So Tifosi will be going home in droves now that that's happened.
Yeah, they'll be queuing up at the rail stations, the train stations. Of course, the trains always run on time in Italy, thanks to Stalin. Dwayne Davies now is the third of our DNFers for this race so far, down to a oh my God.
Well, that puts Rob
Words desert me.
Puts Rob Dunn up into 4th place, which was where he qualified. So actually, no, it's 1 place up from where he qualified. So he's just got to hang in there. He's got a huge gap behind him of half a minute, and a fairly sizable gap ahead of him of about 10 seconds. So there's not really much to do for him apart from just get his head down, try and pump out some laps and hope that someone trips over themselves ahead of him.
Which isn't unlikely considering the tussling that's going on, or not currently, but has been going on between 2nd and 3rd place, Andy and Ziras. Field is the word I was looking for, Stairs. We are left with a field of 8. Yes.
Well, we've had attritional races before in these, not least of which the first round in Australia where we had 2 cars running. Well, let's see if we can make it 10 laps without losing another guy. We've had people going across the grass. Andy Simpson outbraking himself there, and Ziras a little bit over the curbs at the final chicane as well. They seem to have pegged Lewis though. They're back. They're into the 28s now, or Andy Simpson is anyway, and Ziras down into a 29.6. So that actually was faster than Lewis Wedding on the previous lap from Andy Simpson.
Ziras's rears are showing some signs of blistering, so certainly those older tyres are not helping him in the least, whereas Andy's are in a little bit better shape. Looks as if Ziras also has the harder tyres on, Stairs.
Yeah, it's a fairly common strategy. We've seen him do that in all the other rounds, whereas Lewis Wedding likes to go for the soft tyre. Let's see if we can
Rob Dunn has had an accident coming down towards
wing damage
Villeneuve. Yeah, it looks like he's called.
Oh, that's a big crash. That's a big crash, and let's see if we can catch the start of that. Coming out of Tamburello, yeah, just lit up the rears, and was really a passenger from there. He was lucky he hit actually quite square onto the wall, so he might have avoided that. He might have avoided some suspension damage if he can get it back to the pits. And
he has lost 15 seconds to. Sorry, he has lost 15 seconds to Ozrob behind, and obviously while he's in the pits, he's going to probably lose that position at the very least, and most likely to under Gary Neville as well, and very possibly Nether as well. So Rob might go from 4th down to as low as 8th, depending on how long the pit stop takes.
So
but again,
your best strategy for winning a race is to not have me pick you as a possible winner of the race, because my prediction is looking decidedly poorer than it was about 2 minutes ago.
Your chances of finishing a race when you and I are commentating, Stairs, seem to be fairly low, because we just seem to have races where people crash left, right, and centre. I wasn't here for the Melbourne Grand Prix, but other than that, people have the last couple of V8s. I think there were quite a few DNFs in the Super Series that we commentated together. It's something to do with our presence. Maybe people just want to get out of their cars and listen to us.
Maybe that is the case, but a new wing for Rob Dunt. He has made it back to the pits, so it means that hopefully with some luck he can get back into this race and still net a fairly decent result. He did have a fairly sizable gap there, and he didn't actually lose the positions till he came into the pit stops. He managed to do that whole lap and stay ahead of Ozrob.
He did, looking like he's going to come out behind Luke Emmerton at this stage in last place with it all to do, but I mean, I would not count out the chances of a safety car in this race, as it looks like Luke Hamilton has actually been lapped by Lewis Wedding, so that's the amount of pace that Lewis Wedding has currently.
Just seeing Andy Simpson in the previous shot there, doesn't mind climbing over the curb a little bit. I'm surprised the game didn't give him a corner cut on the previous lap for doing that, but his time did come up, and I'd say taking some liberties with the track limits a little bit.
I think Ziras is really struggling on those tyres. He's almost 5 seconds behind Andy Simpson now. Hopefully just settling in and going to start punching in some laps, stretch those tyres out as long as he can.
He has an advantage of 1 minute over Ozrob there. Ozrob is 1 minute behind him. So he's not under any pressure for that last position on the podium, but surely he would have wanted more.
You'd think so. Your call of 2 separate racing packs was entirely correct in the end. I wasn't expecting it to be a minute's gap, however.
Yeah, well, some of the guys who I would say are up there in terms of pace, well, Draper for one is out of the race, so didn't go particularly well for him. And Rob Dunder would have put up in this leading battle, ready to pick up the pieces if anyone tripped over themselves, but Dunt with that mistake is now in a position where he's got to try and claw back some positions if he can.
Yeah, it looks like Simpson's made a couple of errors. He's lost about half a second to Ziras last couple of sectors. Actually under 4 seconds now, so Ziras pushing to get back in touch. It looks as if Andy's tyres are starting to hurt a little bit as well.
Yeah, Ziras was faster on the previous lap by a small amount, just 1/10 of a second. But psychologically, it looks like a lot because it was a 29.9 for Ziras and a 1 minute 30.0 for Andy Simpson.
Nether managing to make his way past Gary Neville and into 5th place, so not going too badly for Nether, considering his somewhat lack of pace in qualifying and practice.
Well, the 5th would be a pretty strong result there, so I don't think he'd be too displeased with that. Just goes to show that pace in qualifying isn't everything. Consistency in the race matters a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you've got people DNFing left, right, and centre. Although he does have Lewis Wedding right up his chuff, yeah, to lap him. So
oh, he drives off the track there, trying to give Lewis the track position. Lewis might have appreciated that, but certainly wouldn't want Nether to throw himself off the track in pursuit of such things, given the comfortable gap he has at the moment.
Yeah, Lewis managing to lap the rest of the field up to, but not including 4th at the moment. So he's checked out, I feel like it's safe to say.
Well, the next car up the road for him is Rob, and given the pace that Lewis Wedding has over Rob, that should happen in the next lap or so. He's about 8 seconds a lap faster by the looks of it, so that means that you'll start to see Rob in front of Lewis Wedding very soon indeed. And in fact, we've got the cog on Lewis Wedding's screen, which suggests he's either editing his pit stop or he's planning to make his pit stop very shortly indeed.
What are the pit windows, Stairs, for the series? What sort of time are we expecting people in?
Well, we normally see people split the race almost exactly in half, so around about lap 15 or 16 would be what we'd expect for the one-stoppers. But if a 2-stop strategy would have worked, you'd probably see them around about this lap.
Alright, so it might be that Lewis is going for a 2-stopper. I don't see much reason not to, considering his pace advantage over the rest of the field. And it would mean that he's not pushing on old tyres at the end, as he's caught up to Rob in the Ravazza, so almost exactly a lap on. He's done very well there to lap everyone up to, but not including the podium now.
And perfect from Rob, getting out of the way ideally, and into the pits comes Lewis Wedding. So the 2-stop strategy is what we see from Lewis Wedding. So we look back to Andy Simpson, and he continues around, and so does... Well, actually, Ziras is a long way back, so we don't see...
No, Ziras continuing around as well, so only Lewis there going for that.
Very interesting. So that suggests possibly to me that Andy Simpson and Ziras are going for the 1-stop, which means that Lewis Wedding might have to do some overtaking on track.
Indeed. Speaking of overtaking, Ziras is catching up to Gary Neville, who wisely gets out of the way. Dwayne Davies has left the pit lane, left the paddock with his helmet on, not really wanting to talk to any of the reporters fairly. And Lewis resumes the race well and truly in 3rd place by about 1 minute and 15 seconds.
2nd place at the moment because Lewis Wedding is behind him, having made his pit stop.
I said Lewis Wedding, did I not?
I thought you said Ziras, beg your pardon. So we'll move on from that little faux pas of mine, but that's obviously, given the pace that Lewis has shown in that early stint, he should be able to catch up to Ziras even before, or maybe not quite before Ziras makes his pit stop, but he'll make inroads given the new tyres that he has on board.
Looks as if Ziras potentially pitting. Can see his crew out in the pit lane.
Interesting to stretch his first stint a little bit longer.
Oh, Andy Simpson in a little bit of a hurry to overtake Rob. He nearly ran up the back of him coming through the Varianta Bussa, but...
Oh, he cuts him off quite a bit on the way. He probably wasn't too happy about that. It's a bit different to endurance racing, as Ziras has continued on this lap for another occasion. With Formula 1, you've got to get straight out of the way as a lap runner. It's a bit different to endurance racing, where it's the lapper's responsibility to get around the lap E. In Formula 1, it's the lap E's responsibility to get out of the way for the lapper.
I think it's a bit too dangerous to expect the faster car to find unused parts of the track to get around a slower car on. It's just asking for some marbles and a wall, I think.
Well, the difference in speed is such that I think some of these guys would get a bit surprised when they see the fast blokes in their mirrors, because it happens so quickly and they might not have even been expecting it. They look in their mirror at one stage, they don't see anything, and then all of a sudden there is a great big black and red McLaren in your mirrors, and Goodness me, it must be a fright.
It must be. And on the topic of seeing someone in your mirrors, Ziras very soon will begin to see Lewis Wedding in his mirrors. Lewis only 2 and a bit seconds down on Ziras, having pitted. So he's showing some incredible pace.
Making inroads, as I said, but it's now to the point where Ziras has committed to this strategy. So it does actually look good for Andy Simpson. If Andy Simpson has a 12-second advantage over Andy, over Lewis. So if he's only making one stop, then Lewis has got to close that gap and make the pass before the end of this race.
Yeah, if Lewis is planning to stop again, which I expect if he would have to at this stage, then he would ideally be wanting to overtake Andy before Andy's first pit stop, and then build a big enough gap so that he can pit and come out ahead again, if at all possible. But Andy's showing some good pace at the moment, so it might get spicy towards the end.
With a one stop, we'd expect Andy in the next 2 laps or so. So if he can continue on this pace, he's only losing about half a second per lap to Lewis at the moment. And then when he comes out of the pits, he'll have fresh tyres, so he might be able to hold that gap at around about 10 seconds for a little while, and that just gives him so much confidence if he can just hold that gap for a while and keep track position and make Lewis Wedding do it the hard way.
That would be the ideal situation. Just make sure that Lewis knows he's not going to be able to walk away with it. Ziras has blinked and Lewis is in his rearview mirror, about a second behind at this stage. So I imagine that'll be like bobbing for apples for Lewis. He's just going to stick his head down, and when he comes up, he'll be on the other side of Ziras, streaking off into the distance with Ziras's very worn tyres.
Well, for pride, I'm sure Ziras will want to keep him behind at least till he makes his pit stop. But the longer Ziras keeps Lewis behind him, it helps Andy Simpson. And if it helps Andy Simpson, it kind of helps Ziras from a points point of view, because if Andy beats Lewis, that's less points for Lewis.
How is Ziras? Is Ziras next in the championship after Lewis?
Well, because he didn't race in round 1, so he's only got 2 second places so far out of the 3 races they've done so far, and very wide through Villeneuve there. That's going to allow Lewis right around the outside. Freebie for Lewis Wedding up into 2nd place, so didn't make it too hard for him. Those tyres really struggling right now. To answer your question, he's on 24 points with Lewis on 30 points, and in between them Luke Joyner on 26 points in 2nd, but not here tonight, so he will drop right back.
That bottom right of Ziras is incredibly bad shape in. That was a bad sentence.
It doesn't. I mean, that sentence was about as good as that car looks to drive right now.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. Let's see what Andy Simpson does if he comes into the pits, because his car has looked a lot more stable once he got past Ziras. And are we seeing him in the pits? No, he's going around again.
Simpson going around again. So to wait to see what Ziras does. He's come out of the Ravazza. His pit crew are
fastest lap. On 15 lap old tyres, Andy Simpson said the fastest lap of the race.
Ziras is in, so going for the undercut, getting onto some fresh rubber, although, as you say, where has Andy pulled that from after 16 laps on those tyres?
I think he's been to the same beach Ziras that Lewis has been to, because he's clearly been sandbagging for all of that time. So new tyres for Ziras, and he'll go to the end of the race on those, but it just looks like he's been outclassed at the moment by the 2 ahead of him. We expect to see Andy in potentially this lap, and that Lola in the background of shot is not Ziras. That is the...
Oh, Andy's off! Andy's off Agua Minerale!
Oh, no! No!
Oh, he did that a few times in warm-up. He got a tank slapper on coming out of the first right-hander and just went straight on and off into the gravel. So Lewis through into first place. No problems whatsoever. And Andy losing a lot of time there, only 20 seconds ahead of Ziras, which is about a pit stop, I'd say. So Ziras might have 2nd place at this stage. Andy all over the show, maybe just pushed it 1 lap too long.
A gift, an absolute gift for Lewis Wedding. I'm kind of selfishly disappointed about that from a commentator's point of view, because that was set up quite nicely to seeing the difference between the 2 strategies. Andy Simpson now Well, he's managed to avoid damage by the looks of it. It was a very light tap with the wall, as we expect to see him come diving into the pit lane, and indeed he does.
Ziras had a very hairy overtake of Nether. He came out of Agua Minerale and suddenly his nose was up the rear wing of the Benetton. Managed to get through with neither of them got damaged. I am hearing reports that Ziras pissed in his seat, so that's not ideal. Ozrob is in the pits. Ziras coming around the last corner. Andy's still stationary in the pits. Ziras is through into second place comfortably. Ziras still stationary. Oh, sorry, Andy's still stationary.
Andy might be repairing damage there. He's been there for a long time, longer than you would expect for a normal tyre and fuel stop. So Ziras is going to have a significant advantage here. And this is me preparing for not having a lot to talk about in the final half of this race, because the gaps we can see are growing as we speak, and that makes Andy Simpson thick end of half a minute behind Ziras at the moment. And a drive-through penalty to boot. So we saw him lock up his tyres on the way in, and I wondered if he'd got the thing stopped in time. He clearly didn't. And now, for his efforts, he's got to tour the pit lane a second time and will almost go a lap down after being almost the favourite for victory not a lap ago.
Absolutely. Changing fortunes here for Andy Simpson. Ziras now with a 30-second gap to the leader and a 30-second gap to the third podium sitter before the penalty. Ziras can sort of put his head down and just groove his way to the end of this race. And if Lewis makes a mistake ahead of him, great. But if not, he can calm down and settle into that second place, because I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, Andy had set the fastest lap of the race just prior to going off there, so you got to wonder whether he was pushing just that little bit too hard.
Took a little bit too much life out of the tyres, maybe, and just wasn't. He was a little bit all over the place in warm-up, because obviously didn't get much chance to drive during qualifying, but during warm-up he was going off at Agua Minerale fairly consistently the few laps that I watched. As Ozrob spins coming out of the Ravazza, nearly caused an accident, but Andy manages to get through. I wonder if he'll serve the drive-through this lap. But so the Agua Minerale has been causing issues for him all night as he locks up into the pit lane again. Hopefully not another drive-through penalty there for Andy.
Yeah, just seeing a replay there of Ozrob spinning, and lucky those guys were to avoid him. Now, Rob Dunt's made his pit stop, and he's back up into 4th place. So that's pretty impressive.
It is. Well done to Rob Dunt, considering that he lost his wing and was down in 8th place at one stage. So he's obviously got some pretty decent pace.
Fastest lap from Lewis Wedding, 27s.
Actually, has Rob Dunt pit again since then? Perhaps he
he
was.
Off. He just took, we saw it on the screen a moment ago, he has made his second pit stop.
Ah, excellent. So I was wondering if he'd put himself onto a 2-stopper. So I suppose this would be until the end from here. Yes,
now we would expect that would be the case. Ziras we also expect to go to the end on his current set of tyres, and Lewis we expect in one more time, but he'll be very quick towards the end of the race. So we saw him make the pass on Ziras just before Ziras came into the pits, so that would mean that Lewis should quite comfortably come out of the pits when he makes his pit stop ahead of Ziras.
Yeah, 30-second gap, and it's probably about, what, a 20-second pit stop?
About that.
Yeah, so probably, unless something untoward happens, like forgetting to turn off damage or something, Lewis is likely to come out in 1st place as he comes up to lap Gary Neville for a second time.
Now, Gary Neville, 11 seconds behind Nether. That is now the closest battle on the track, which just goes to show how things have changed, because not a moment ago we had a potential three cars in contention for the win, but it looks at the moment like it's basically between Lewis and Ziras, but realistically, if Lewis doesn't make a mistake, it's his to lose.
We were talking earlier, Stairs, and you were saying that these races, they tend not to be the most exciting because everyone sort of gets spread out. And until this point in the race, I've been wondering what the hell you were talking about, because this has been a cracker. But it is.
They do tend to settle down towards the back end, though. And that was in confidence. I told you these races were not a good losing streak. But anyway, it's no, we've certainly had plenty to talk about. We haven't been bored.
No, definitely not.
So we just wonder where the next bit of action is going to come from. It's in a holding pattern at the moment. Lewis Wedding's just put in the fastest first sector time of the race at 25 flat. So not content with setting the fastest lap of the race, he wants to do it again.
Well, I guess he wants to take it back away from Andy Simpson. No, never mind. I didn't notice.
He's already done that. He's already done that, my friend.
Bit.
Andy Simpson's fastest lap of a 28.1 was obliterated by Lewis Wedding's 27.4. And Ozrob has a drive-through penalty. Now, what's that for? I don't know if we've... Well, let's see where he is. He might have just come out of the pits, or it might be for corner cutting. So let's try and catch a replay. Yes, he was just coming out of the pits, so he's got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane, Madbird.
Yeah, I can see. I'm watching Gary Neville. I just saw a pair of 11s heading into the pits, so I imagine that Oz probably left those on his way in and came in a little bit hot. As Gary Neville is...
Grab her, you stupid!
Gary Neville is about 13.5 seconds behind Nether still, so that gap is definitely not coming down.
Well, Lewis Wedding's coming towards the end of his stint. You expect him to see him in the pits.
What is... Oh,
actually,
Lewis...
Sorry,
wait, Lewis has had an issue, or has he already pit?
I think he might have made his pit stop, because that's
he has pit.
That gap's come down to 9 seconds, so beg your pardon, we missed that one there. But he had such a lead, it really made no difference. The gap is really our indicator, as his gap has reduced by 20 seconds, which is about the time needed to make a pit stop. But the pit entry is a little bit earlier than you would expect. And it seems to be catching a lot of drivers out tonight. It's right near, basically where the track splits off from, where the pit lane splits off from the racetrack itself, and you have to basically be already slowing down there, or you won't get down to speed.
Always a good idea to do some practice pit entries, try to figure out where that line is, because you don't really want to be learning that in the race.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, the previous two races, Madbird, the winner has been Lewis Wedding, and the person in second place has been Ziras. But the podium sitter has been someone different each time. Now, in the previous race, it was Scott Murrell. In the race before that, it was Scott Murrell. In the previous race, it was Jamie Snow. Tonight, it's definitely going to be someone different, because those two guys are not in this race. And so it means potentially that whoever finishes third tonight won't be racing in Monaco in the next race.
Wait, can you run that one by me again?
I was just making an obtuse statistic, mainly for the sake of 3, 2, 1 non-tent.
Oh, Apex Rearing. Lewis has had a bit of a messy lap, I think. He was a little bit all over the place in the last sector, because the gap to Ziras dropped down to as low as 7 seconds at one point, but then it's gone back out to about 9. Yep. In
as many corners. And catching Gary Neville, who's not particularly obliging and jumping out of the way there, but now he lifts out of the throttle, and that's Lewis Wedding into the Variante Alta without incident. And
excellent.
8 seconds the lead, so basically managing it from here to the end, I would expect. But yes, the point I was making is that in the last two races we've had the same victor and the same person in second place, but different people in third place, both of whom are not here tonight and didn't race in the race after they got their podium, which would suggest to me that whoever wins the podium, whoever gets third place tonight, will not race in the next race.
Nether off at Tamburello, very, very deep. He is in the gravel, well and truly, losing a lot of time to Gary Neville there, but still looks like Gary Neville has made a pit stop, actually, so never mind, he's safe. But just very deep there at Tamburello for Nether, but hasn't cost him anything at this stage.
Yeah, strange one. Looks like he completely missed his braking point, went straight off. But thankfully, because it's a gravel trap there, he seems to know how to go off, Nether, because whenever it happens, he manages to avoid getting damage to his car, which is something that a lot of other guys can't say.
Yeah, even if it costs you a little bit more time, better to spend some time spinning your tyres in the gravel than to have to replace your wing or something, which will cost you a healthy 30 seconds or so in the pit lane.
Well, he has about a 30-second advantage over Gary Neville, so he doesn't want to get damaged because he'll lose the position to Gary if that happens. But he can just nurse this car home from here and quite comfortably pick up the points for 5th place, which would be his second best result of the season. The closest battle on track at the moment between Ziras and Nether, 8 seconds, is by far the smallest gap between
Ziras and Lewis.
What did I say?
Ziras and Nether.
Ziras and Lewis, beg your pardon. We were talking about Nether before, hence the mistake. But Rob Dunt looks pretty safe at the moment to me in 3rd place. He has a 50-second advantage, sorry, a 1 minute and 10-second advantage over Rob Dunt, and in front of him 50 seconds to Ziras. So it doesn't look like that position's going to change anytime soon.
Doesn't look like it. Rob Dunt coming up to lap Gary Neville, down into the Ravazza. Very, very hot into that left-hander, but has managed to get the pass done, so well done him. And yeah, 56 seconds back to Nether, 30 seconds back to Gary Neville, and 50 seconds back to Ozrob, and 15 seconds back to Luke from Ozrob. So that's actually probably legitimately the closest battle, in inverted commas, on the track at the moment is Luke and Ozrob, although Ozrob is streaking away.
Who's Luke?
Luke Emerton.
Oh, beg your pardon.
And he's off.
Is he?
No, I mean you.
Oh, no, he's...
Yeah,
Oh,
he's off like a ball with gas.
hurt me esophagus. Anyway. Oh,
Not your esophagus.
yeah, that hurt.
Excellent. Well, Lewis still holding that 8-second advantage over Ziras. They're about a Ravazza apart. Stairs still going.
A bit more than a Ravazza. That's probably more than that. Probably a bit more than a Ravazza, but his last lap at 1 minute 30, so Lewis is absolutely cruising right now. The gap's still 8 seconds to Ziras, so I think he's just looking at his pit board and matching Ziras' sector times to bring it home now and not put it in the fence.
Probably a wise decision. Ziras looks like he's still going pretty full commitment. Oh, and he spun at Tamburello, but he's managed to keep it out of the wall. He's still got 40 seconds back to Andy Simpson, so he's reasonably safe. But that has, if it wasn't already, that's probably put paid to him catching up to Lewis.
Let's have a look at the replay there, and just the inside curb on the second part of that corner, just lost it a little bit. You do have to climb the curbs in these cars for the lap time, but it's so dangerous. They're as slippery as ice.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be very scary to drive at this point in the race.
It's nearly doubled Lewis Wedding's advantage over him. Out to 14 seconds now, so that has certainly put paid to any chance. Not that we thought Lewis Wedding wasn't in complete control already, but it certainly means that he can cruise at home from here. Just 6 laps remaining in this race. And
Count them down, mate.
count them down. That Rothmans Williams just looking resplendent in the Italian sun.
Lots and lots of cardboard cutouts on that hill, watching the race unfold.
Enjoying it with
They'd
every
be
ounce
loving it.
of their cardboard being. And there are the tyre marks on the road there from Lewis Wedding spinning on the previous lap. Lewis Wedding will have a small little smile on his face as he just ticks these laps down and hopes that his computer hangs in there, because that's the only thing that could rob him of the points tonight, I should imagine. And it'll make
Let's not jinx him.
three wins on the trot. It would make it. 3 from pole position. Didn't get fastest lap last time out in Argentina. That accolade went to Jamie Snow. Jamie Snow not here tonight, so doesn't look like anyone's going to get close to the fastest lap of Lewis Wedding. Andy Simpson, incidentally, did get down into the 27s after Lewis beat his fastest lap of the race, but Andy not challenging the fastest lap again. At the time, when Andy did have the fastest lap of the race, it was a 28. But it's all academic really now. Andy Simpson's excuse me, basically just circulating to pick up the points for a third place.
Yeah, it looks as if he's actually just had a pit stop, so I wonder if that was a free pit stop that he thought no reason not to do it, get some fresh rubber, make sure he doesn't put it in a wall or something in the last closing laps of the race.
See if we can pick up anything on the timing screens. Everything looks fairly simple. Andy Simpson got a corner cut on the previous lap, which shows up because he didn't have a time. Nether lost a bit of, lost a bit of ground to Gary Neville, but nothing particularly to be worried about. Just a second between himself and Gary Neville, but the gap on track is about 35 seconds. And let's see, Luke Emerton took 3 seconds out of Ozrob, who looks like he, well, that was that gap, still about 15 seconds, so it doesn't look like there's enough time for Emerton to do anything about Ozrob there.
Would depend on Ozrob might make a mistake or something. I think we're basically banking on someone spinning and making something a little bit interesting happen.
Well, we're just looking at where it's most likely to happen. And the man you're looking at right now is probably the person least likely to make that happen. He's just cruising right now. Ziras has brought that gap down to 12 seconds, but Lewis...
Oh! Ozrob off at Piratella. He is in the wall. Has managed to avoid losing his wing or anything like that, but... it's funny, as we were just saying that, the gap down to Luke Emerton is now down to about 6 seconds, so it's quickly becoming the closest battle on track.
And catching a replay of that, just lost the back end through Piratella, and he hit that wall very hard. So I wouldn't be surprised if he struggles for pace towards the end of the race. That car might be a handful.
Still got the majority of the run from the Variante Alta down to the Ravazzas in hand over Luke Emerton, but Luke does seem to have a little bit more pace and is hunting him down. Bit of a messy race, I think, from Luke so far. He's had a few spins and a couple of accidents, which is why he's down in 8th place.
Yes, but still running and is in line to pick up some points for 8th place. That'd be pretty good for him. He made his debut in Automobilist Australia in the TCC series, in which he got 2 wins. So it's quite a strong debut for him. That's a series that's got handicaps with weight penalties and all that sort of stuff, but nonetheless, you've still got to get the job done, and it was a great way for him to start his campaign with AMS Oz. So taking on a bigger challenge tonight in the F1s, and finishing the race is an achievement in itself.
Absolutely, that would be where I'd compete. That would probably be my aim, is just getting to the end, because they are certainly a handful to drive.
And Rob Dunn has just passed Luke Emerton for on track.
Rob again, another accident by the looks of it, coming out of Piratella, and that gap to Luke Emerton is down to a minute and a half. Oh, sorry, a second and a half even.
Well, let's watch that, because I still think he's carrying damage from that big accident, as Lewis Wedding sets the fastest lap of the race down into a 27 flat, shaves another 4/10 off. Doesn't do it in half measures, does he? So Luke Emerton all over the back now of Ozrob, with Ozrob carrying, I would say, a substantial amount of damage from the crash we saw earlier on.
Yeah, potentially. So Luke looking at picking up some extra points here towards the end of the race. We've got 4 laps to go once they cross the line. Sorry, 5 laps to go even.
Less for Lewis Wedding, though, because these guys are 3 laps down. So we've got to keep an eye on that, with Lewis Wedding having completed 28 laps.
2 laps to go. Do apologise. Oh, and it looks as if Andy Simpson's had a moment coming out of Agua Minerale, has hit the wall, and has been lapped by Lewis Wedding. So first one to be lapped.
Kept it out of the wall by the looks of it, or just a gentle tap.
Oh.
So
Luke Emerton has spun it coming out of Tamburello, and that has put paid to his challenge for the 7th place that Ozrob occupies.
Well,
bugger.
that was what we were kind of relying on for a bit of excitement towards the back end of the race, but yeah, just got a little bit impatient there, taking way too much curb, and that put an end.
Ozrob is coming into Piratella, and if there's anywhere that will give him enough cause to concern to get Luke back into this, but of course he's taken it perfectly.
excuse my inability to find the right car there. We found him in the end. Thought it was something happening, but no, it was just you postulating. But,
it was me postulating. Yes.
Glad I could use that word in an appropriate context. But Lewis Wedding, as you said, putting Andy Simpson a lap down and leaving Ziras the only man left on the lead lap. It's been a tricky old race in terms of staying on the lead lap.
Andy's going to want to be careful here. He seems to have a bit more pace
Oh,
than...
nearly throws it away there. How did he hold on to that? He still seems to be almost carrying more speed. Is he carrying damage? He's driving like a madman.
I had visions in my mind of him just losing it and flying directly into the side of Lewis Wedding and causing an incredible upset. But he managed to keep it away from him. Terrifying, though, and a little bit reckless there from Andy Simpson getting so close to the leader.
Well, the leader's going through. You don't need that kind of heart-stopping moment to occur in your rear vision mirror. He would have seen this McLaren wobbling around like a wobble-headed, one of those wobble-heading things that you put on your dashboard on your car.
Bobblehead.
Yeah, those things. And it would have been an unwelcome surprise if he'd been taken out by the McLaren that started from 10th place up into 2nd and looked good for a win, and now back into 3rd. So it's been a roller coaster for Andy Simpson. Got to be said, he's provided us with a huge amount of entertainment tonight, and now for good measure, he's doing his best to take out the leader. Oh no, he's backed out. Has he run out of fuel, or is he just giving the leader some space? I don't know.
I would hope he's just giving the leader some space. I'm not sure what he's doing, to be honest. Don't know what's in his head.
I think Andy's just going around at his normal pace, and Lewis is just cruising. He's about 4 seconds off the pace that he was doing earlier in the race, so he's just bringing it home. And Andy's just sort of catching up to him each time this happens, and now he's slowing right down because he wants to race. He just wants to drive at full pace, and he keeps catching Lewis. Basically, that's the way I interpret what we're looking at right now. It's the last lap, actually. Lewis Wedding's coming around the Ravazza to finish the lap, to finish the race.
Yeah, and it's been... it seems like we were robbed a little bit of an interesting end of the race with Andy putting it in the wall. It was going to keep Lewis Wedding honest towards the end of the race, perhaps, but Lewis crosses for what really was an unopposed victory in the end.
Here comes Ziras to finish 2nd, so he'll be probably happy with that, considering where he was earlier in the race, struggling for 3rd. But probably didn't get the practice in that he wanted, and with you commentating next to him, probably a good result, actually. And Andy Simpson finishes a lap down. Rob Dunt coming home 4th.
Can be distracting to be in a room with, so he's probably done very well, as you say. Nether coming to finish in 5th place, which is a decent return for him, considering the pace he had earlier in the night. He's picked up a few positions. Gary Neville, that's a while away, but he'll be coming home in 6th. Oz in 7th and Luke in 8th.
Yeah, so Rob has now a 16-second advantage over Luke Emerton, so limping that arrows home after he gave it a fair old thwack against the wall. But Luke spinning in his pursuit of 7th place, and will be content with 8th. He still finishes well ahead of the guys who didn't finish, Dwayne Davies, Jaden Draper and Matt Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 DNFs. Not too bad. I was expecting more, to be honest, but well done for everybody who finished for finishing, and Gary Neville coming across the line to take the 6th place. Excellent. Stairs, are you there? It appears he's not. Wonder if other people can hear me. All right, well, apparently people can still hear me. Hello, Rhodey. Hello, Dwayne. Hello, Heath. There's going to be a bit of lag from this because I only just got your messages. But anyway, that was an exciting race in the end. Lewis is here. Hello, Lewis. How did you find that race? Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. Obviously,
A little bit lonely, wasn't it?
well, it was sort of lonely by design in some respect. Obviously, the two behind me were one stopping, I was two stopping, so I had to be lonely. If I was racing with people, it was would have been a problem. So, thankfully, in the first stint, obviously Ziras and Andy were battling it out, which held them up for a while, and that gave me a bit of a gap, and that sort of set things up from there.
Absolutely. So I've just seen a message from Stairs explaining his absence. I understand. So were you always going to do the two-stop, Lewis, or did you figure you had the gap? Stairs' return. You had the gap, and you thought you might as well take the extra stop, save yourself a bit of pain at the end.
Well, as soon as I did a bit of testing, obviously, as soon as I jumped on the serve, I sort of tested tyres, and pace was okay for a while, but then I knew towards the end the rear tyres in particular are really bad, and around here you need rear tyres. So sort of, even then, still sort of further through practice, sort of tried to get a one-stop sort of setup going, but took a bit of fuel out and tried playing with two-stop stuff, and it was the pace difference was quite big. So I was like, okay, with the pit lane and everything, so two-stop would be a bit better, and hopefully I could build a gap, and obviously, thankfully I did. Unfortunately, Andy obviously made a mistake just before his pit stop. Otherwise, it would have been really close. It would have been interesting to see, obviously, how the second half of the race would have panned out. But obviously, he made that mistake, and obviously, towards the end, it was a bit lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stairs, I think you're here with our second podium sitter, Ziras. Take it away.
Yes, Ziras, it was interesting to see you go for the one stop as opposed to the two stops. So tell us about that.
Well, to be honest, I'm having a kind of a bad night, and I didn't really have time to prepare any setups or stops. So I just thought, yeah, they might last just long enough, those soft tyres, and sure enough, they did. Unfortunately, I started the race on old tyres, so it made the first stint very difficult.
Well, how about the...
Jesus Christ.
How about the battle with Andy Simpson early on? Tell us about that.
Fuck's this. Excuse my language. Yeah, that battle actually was really annoying because we lost so much time to Lewis. And I was being shoved wide and everything. I just wanted to sit back and race, but Andy had other ideas.
Well, that's what it looked like from our perspective. But once it got clear you were able to run your own race, it looked like you were struggling with the tyres towards the end of your stint.
Yes, absolutely. I was slowing myself down and making sure to save the rears because I could see them just going down and down every lap. And yeah, luckily they lasted to the pit stops.
Fair enough. Well, that's your story. That's Lewis's story. We haven't got Andy Simpson with us, so we can't talk to him about his strategy. It would have been interesting to see, as Lewis said, how that would have gone. But that pretty much wraps us up for the Formula One tonight. San Marino Grand Prix coming up in the remaining rounds of this particular series. We've got the Sandown 250 coming to you on the weekend. So the beginning of the Supercar Endurance Series, followed by Ibarra in the TCCs and on Monday, and then the Porsche Cup on Thursday next week. So Madbird, that's pretty much all we have time for.
Absolutely. Me and Scruff calling the Porsches next Thursday, so make sure you'll tune into that because it's going to be very serious fun.
Will be indeed. Thanks very much indeed for watching, everyone. Bye for now.
Okay.